Sarah's hand went still on her phone. The color left her face in waves. First pale, then white, then the kind of hollow gray that matched the polished tile floors beneath her feet. Behind her, Mom knocked over her coffee mug. Porcelain cracked against the floor like a starter pistol going off. "That's not possible," Dad said, but his voice broke apart on the last word. "This is our family's building. We've been running out of this address for 28 years. Mr. Calloway, Sarah's direct supervisor and the company's chief financial officer, stood holding the executive elevator door open. His face was carefully composed, the kind of expression professionals wear when a disaster is unfolding right in front of them and there's nothing they can do. "Mr. Hendricks, your daughter purchased this property from the prior ownership group 5 years ago. Your company has been renting space from her since 2020. I didn't say a word. I just stood there with my phone in my hand, the digital access code still glowing on the screen. The executive entrance had opened for me with a quiet beep and a green light, the same entrance Michael had blocked me out of 20 minutes earlier. "Sarah doesn't have that kind of money." Mom had steadied herself enough to sound outraged. "She works in admin. She makes what, 60,000? 54, Michael corrected without thinking. He had always known my salary down to the dollar, had dropped that number into every family dinner conversation for the past 7 years. "Sarah makes 54,000 a year. There's absolutely no way." "Miss Hendricks's income is her own business," Mr. Calloway said, cutting in. "But I've just received a message from the property management office. They're asking for clarification on the lease renewal terms in light of what happened here today." What happened here today? That was how he described it. Professional language for your son just locked his sister out of the building she owns. I had been 22 when I bought this property, fresh out of college with a degree in software engineering and no ceremony to show for it. Nobody from my family had come to graduation. "College is for people who don't have other options," Dad had told me. "You'll find someone who's already made it and build a life from there." Instead, the building had been a foreclosure listing, 11 stories of 1970s construction that every developer in the city had passed on. The previous owners had borrowed too much before the housing crash and spent the next decade drowning in it. I paid $2.1 million. That sounds like a large number until you understand the property was appraised at $7.8 million. I paid in cash, money I had earned from a software tool I built during my sophomore year, a data security system that 2 regional hospital networks licensed first, then 5 insurance companies, then 38 corporate clients across 4 industries. My family never asked where the money came from. They were too busy writing off my little tech project. That was what Michael had called it just that morning during the weekly staff meeting. Sarah's little tech project doesn't give her the authority to weigh in on building access decisions. He had been pushing to have me removed from the emergency notification list, said it looked unprofessional that his sister, who handled basic IT requests, had the same building clearance as the senior leadership team.
"I want this cleaned up," he told building management. "New standards, proper hierarchy, no exceptions based on personal relationships." So the codes were reset. Every entrance, every floor, every secured zone. Michael had personally signed off on deactivating my badge, had smiled while doing it. "You'll need to go through the right process now," he said. "Same as everybody else. The right process." I built the process. Mr. Calloway cleared his throat. "Miss Hendricks, I apologize for this confusion. If you'd like to come upstairs, we can sit down and go over the lease terms." "Sarah." Dad's voice had that edge it takes on when he's trying to reestablish control. "If this is some kind of stunt." "It isn't a stunt, Mr. Hendricks." Mr. Calloway's composure cracked slightly. "I've reviewed the deed. I've gone through our lease agreements. The company has been sending rent payments to Hendricks Property Group for 5 years. I simply didn't realize." He looked at me. "All our correspondence goes through a management company. We never had direct contact with the owner." Of course not. I had built it that way deliberately. There's a theory in psychology called the sunk cost trap, the belief that if you just keep trying, keep investing, eventually the outcome will change. I had spent years pouring myself into the slot machine of my family's approval, convinced myself that if I could just prove I was smart enough, successful enough, useful enough, they would finally stop treating me like an afterthought. But their version of me was more real to them than I was. I understood that clearly the night I sat in Dad's office 8 years ago. I had just put my name on my second property, a modest commercial space in the east side of the city. I was so excited I drove straight there from the closing, proud. Dad had been watching a game. "Not now, Sarah. I'll be up after the 4th quarter." He never came up, By morning, he'd moved on to something else. That was the moment I stopped trying to earn their attention, started building something they would never see coming, precisely because they had never bothered to look. The lease, Mom said slowly. Our company's lease is with Hendricks Property Group. Yes, ma'am. And Sarah owns the building? The whole building. Michael finally found his voice. That's an 11-story commercial building in the center of downtown. Current market value? Approximately $7.6 million, Mr. Calloway offered, though Miss Hendricks acquired it well below that in 2020. The number settled into the room like something physical. $7.6 million. My $54,000 admin salary suddenly looked like a very intentional decision. I want to see the paperwork, Dad said. I opened my property management portal and pulled up the ownership documents. Everything was right there, clear and clean. Hendricks Property Group, LLC. Owner, Sarah Marie Hendricks. Purchase date, September 2020. Purchase price, $2,100,000. Dad's hands weren't steady as he held my phone. Where did $2 million come from? From my little tech project. The word,
How much is that? Mom's voice had dropped to almost nothing. The property generates roughly $45,000 per month in rental income. After operating costs, that's about $29,000 in net monthly income. Times 12, times 5 years. Mr. Calloway worked the math faster than anyone else in the room. His expression moved from composed professional to something closer to genuine respect. $1.7 million in net income over 5 years, plus roughly $5.5 million in property appreciation. That's a $7 million return on a $2 million investment. And you work in admin, Michael said. You sit at a help desk and reset people's passwords. I work in IT because I like it. The salary pays my rent and my groceries. Everything else takes care of itself through other channels. Other channels, plural. What else? Dad asked. I could have kept it simple. Instead, I opened another folder. I own 3 additional commercial properties, 2 residential buildings with 12 units between them, and I hold a 35% stake in the company that owns the license to my security software. It currently has 83 corporate clients. I had started keeping a record 3 years earlier, not of assets or income. Money was easy to track. Banks did that automatically. What I tracked was the other ledger, the invisible one. Entry 1, first property purchase. Cost, the moment of pride I wanted to share with someone who cared. Status, unrecoverable. Dad was watching a game. Mom was on the phone. I sat with the deed in my hands and ate dinner alone. Entry 2, 7 years of being diminished. Cost, the version of myself that still believed I belonged at the table. Michael's job got discussed at every family gathering in detail. Specific projects, promotions, office politics. My work got still doing the computer thing and a subject change. Entry 3, the building security system. Cost, 140 hours I spent over 3 months setting up the exact infrastructure Michael used to lock me out. No one asked how I learned to do that. No one offered to pay me. Michael signed off on removing my access without once thinking about who had built the system in the first place. Entry 4, being the family's unofficial emotional support. Cost, the energy I never got back. Mom called me when she needed to vent, when she needed tech help, when she needed someone to explain things to her. She never once picked up the phone to ask how I was doing. The record had 42 entries, each one a quiet loss that didn't appear on any official statement. I called it the shadow ledger. The costs no one validates because no one else can see them. Mr. Calloway had begun speaking again. Miss Hendricks, in light of today's situation, we should discuss the lease renewal.
Calloway's notification came in around 9:45, right around the time Michael was deactivating my building badge. There are standard procedures for situations like this, Mr. Calloway said carefully. Negotiations, a good faith period. Good faith would have been Michael checking with building management before removing access for someone with ownership level clearance, he assumed, the way all of you have assumed for years that I don't know what I'm doing. We never said that. Dad's voice was tight. I pulled out my phone and opened the audio folder. Dad's voice from a month ago. Sarah doesn't think in business terms. She's in IT. That's a completely different world. Mom's voice from 6 weeks ago. We need accomplished people at Michael's dinner. Not everyone needs to come. Michael's voice from that morning. Sarah's little tech project doesn't give her any standing to make decisions about building access. I have 31 recordings, each one dated and saved to cloud backup. You recorded our conversations? Mom looked like I had done something unforgivable. I documented a pattern. There's a difference. The legal and operational machinery moved on its own after that. Formal notice reached the company by noon. By mid-afternoon, their real estate team had begun searching for alternatives. By the end of the week, they discovered that comparable office space in the downtown core was renting for $67 per square foot. I had been charging $36. The new space would add approximately $47,000 to their monthly operating costs, not counting the relocation fees or the build-out of new tenant improvements. Mr. Calloway reached out through my attorney 3 times in the first 2 weeks. Each time the response was the same. Miss Hendricks has committed to a residential conversion of the property. The commercial lease will not be renewed. That was true. I had been planning the conversion for nearly 2 years. The architectural drawings were done. The city permits were issued. Financing was in place. The building would become mixed-income condominiums, asking price between $620,000 and $890,000 per unit, depending on floor and orientation. 40 units total. Pre-sale interest had already exceeded supply. Michael showed up at my apartment on day 9. I watched him through the entry camera for a long moment before I opened the door. "You're going to collapse Dad's company," he said. No greeting, no preamble. "I'm ending a commercial lease. The relocation cost alone is going to hurt us for 2 quarters, maybe 3. You keep saying us like I'm included in that. Your family. You didn't care whose building it was. You cared about being the one who made the decision." He didn't answer that. The fallout moved in stages. The company's relocation triggered a routine financial review. The review uncovered that Dad had been drawing personal expenses through company accounts for several years. Nothing criminal in scale, but enough to constitute a breach of his fiduciary responsibility to the board. The board opened a formal inquiry. Michael came under separate scrutiny. He had authorized a security change that created a legal liability with the building's owner during an active lease negotiation period. His performance review in April was damaging. By May, he was under a formal corrective action plan. Mom tried a different approach. She called and cried. She asked how I could do this to my own brother, to my own father. "I'm not doing anything to them. I'm making a property decision. If they had treated me like someone worth taking seriously, we wouldn't be standing here." "But family is the people who show up when being related isn't enough. You haven't shown up for me in 7 years. Construction started in late summer. I gave them an extra 5 weeks beyond the contract deadline as a quiet courtesy. I didn't tell them that. The building had excellent structure underneath its dated facade. The conversion was ahead of schedule by October. I was invited to the city's annual Development Awards dinner in November. The program listed me as a featured honoree. Sarah Hendricks, Hendricks Property Group. Dad and Michael were in the room. Their company was a sponsor. They watched from across the banquet hall as the deputy mayor handed me an engraved award. "Ms. Hendricks has transformed several aging commercial properties in our city's core," she said. "Her mixed-use projects have added housing, created jobs, and brought new life to corridors that had been in decline for years. She represents exactly the kind of long-term thinking our city needs more of." The applause was real. These people knew the work. They respected it. My family stood at their table looking like people who had just realized they had been reading the wrong map for years. I sold the original building in December. The buyer was a regional developer planning a phased residential conversion. Final sale price, $11.8 million. After taxes and closing costs, I cleared $9.4 million in net proceeds. I used part of the proceeds to acquire 2 new properties. One was a shuttered community theater with strong structural bones and a lot of history. The other was a small professional campus where I relocated my IT work, the job I genuinely enjoy, the one that pays $54,000 a year. Because the salary was never the point. Michael sent a single email. Subject line, "Can we talk about things?" I moved it to archive without opening it. Revenge is from 9 properties forward. I build my future one foundation at a time.